It's a particular pleasure tonight to welcome Benno Moiseiwitsch, not only because he has long been a sovereign pianist of our time, but because he's a particularly good old friend and, incidentally, one of my favorite bridge partners. Benno, it's a great pleasure to welcome you here tonight.
Thank you, Abram. I'm delighted to be here.
You know that the title of this panorama broadcast is Reminiscences of Rachmaninoff, and we are most anxious to hear something of your associations with Rachmaninoff. And I'm first going to ask you, when did you and Rachmaninoff first meet?
Well, actually, at my first concert in New York.
When was that?
1919.
At Carnegie?
At Carnegie Hall, and Rachmaninoff came in with a friend, and he was introduced to me, which made me very embarrassed because I should have met him the week before at his concert.
Oh.
But I was overcome by shyness, being the first time in America and seeing new people and climate, and I didn't want to meet a great man under those circumstances.
But you did go to hear him?
I certainly heard him, and it was a wonderful recital, but I was overcome, as I say, and I did not go to meet him, and I was all the more thrilled when next week he came into the artist room and we met.
Benno, were you playing any of Rachmaninoff's works that night?
Yes, I played 3 or 4 of his preludes. And that, I think, is really the link that started our friendship, especially one of the preludes, because he was very gracious in his
comment,
appreciation. Especially, he mentioned one prelude.
Which one?
The B minor. And I said, well, that happens to be my favorite prelude. And he said, well, I'll let you into a secret. It's also my favorite prelude.
Yes, almost anything but the C-sharp minor was his favorite prelude, wasn't it? Tell us some of the things that come to you in connection with your performances of the first and the second concerto, Benno.
In connection with Rachmaninoff?
Yes.
When I last saw him, it was the year when the war broke out. And he was in London in March. And he told me he was coming back in September to play his first concerto for the first time. So although I studied it, and they wanted me to play, I said I would not play it because I want Rachmaninoff to give the first performance.
Oh.
So we waited, and of course Rachmaninoff went back to America, and there was no likelihood of his coming to play in England. So I was the first to play this work in the new version, at any rate.
Yes, the revised version.
The revised version.
Do you know the original version, Benno?
I saw it. It looked terrifying, about twice as long and twice as many notes.
Oh, really?
Oh, terrific.
I thought he added a great deal.
No, I don't think so. No, there were too many more passage works.
Yes. What did he do, sort of here and there modernize the harmony?
Well, that's one imagines. I don't know. I just glanced through the copy of the first version. But here he certainly harmonized and introduced new rhythms, changes of time, and made it much more modern. With Rachmaninoff one day after lunch, I went up to his room for a little chat, talking about all sorts of things. And then he asked me, have you heard so-and-so lately? A mutual friend of ours. I said, yes. He said, how was he? I said, oh, wonderful form, as usual. But, of course, when he got a little bit lazy and bored, he was, as usual, making accents where they didn't belong, and so on. So I said, oh, yes, I know, he's apt to do that. But I had so-and-so mentioning another great pianist. He plays this wonderfully. I said, oh, yes, I know, he does. But I wish you'd keep out of things which he doesn't like playing, which is something that you write about in your book,
yes.
Incidentally. And he said, yes, so-and-so. But of course, this fellow, mentioning a third great artist, that's his cup of tea. I said, oh, yes. But then, of course, he's got no heart or words to that effect. At any rate, within a few minutes, we went through about 8 or 10 pianists. Everybody was wonderful, but something... We were speaking without any animosity or venom. It's just they're all friends of ours. We both admire them very much, but in just harmless discussion, you're apt to make these remarks. And then I looked at my watch and I said, good God, I must go. I'm late. So he got up and helped me, and opened the door for me, and shook hands. I was already on the other side of his suite. He said, well, I thank you very much. So I said, thank me? Why thank me? I said, I thank you for a nice luncheon, a nice half an hour companionship. He said, no, I want to thank you because you killed everybody except me. So I said, oh, wait a moment. Next week I'm lunching with Hoffman and then we'll kill you. So the last I saw of him was his mouth wide open, roaring with
laughter.
silent laughter.
Well, that's a happy memory. Benno, tell me about some of your ideas in regard to playing the works of Rachmaninoff, which you have heard him play personally or on recordings. How close do you think the artist, the interpreter, should try to come to the composer's ideas of a work as he exemplifies it in his performances?
I was always thrilled, but I never was an imitator. But I must have unconsciously incorporated some of his ideas. But in many ways, we differed.
Yes, of course.
And he knows that.
Yes, just as
And
your
he
personalities.
never objected to it.
I know that very well about him. He was remarkably flexible in allowing other people their own individualities.
Yes, but apart from that, you know, something occurred to me. I don't know whether it's just fancy. Rachmaninoff, of course, never plays the same thing
Twice
the same way.
Right.
And I imagine that he almost does it purposely. Because he does not want, everybody plays his works. And if he played it in a stereotyped way, which he probably could if he wanted to, then everybody will play the same way. But if he plays it differently on different occasions, then they will give them leeway to play it.
But even if he didn't want to not play it the same way, could he, with his creative imagination, have helped himself, Benno? After all, the creative propensions were working so strongly within him that I'm sure certain ideas which occurred instantaneously to him were inspirational, and he,
Well, naturally, yes.
just as they do to you
Well,
or
of
to
course.
any other great artist.
Yes, but then of course he can, what he may not agree if you do to a work of Chopin, add an octave or a chord or something, he does it himself in his own works.
Yes.
But not every time, because he doesn't want anybody that hears him, any pianist that hears him, think, oh, this must be right, and we'll play it that way.
Yes.
Sometimes he does it, sometimes he doesn't do it, because he never practiced his works in any case. It was just an inspired performance.
Yes, and it's fantastic because they are so formidable in difficulty, aren't they?
Well, his technique was all ready-made. It was all for these things. He played it for so many years. I asked him once, before I played, I think, the second concerto, I said, do you ever practice before a concert? He said, no, and put up his finger to his throat. He said, it's up to here. I said, if I had to practice them, I would never play them.
Yes, but, Hoffman once told me something about Rachmaninoff which stopped me cold. He said, it's true that Rachmaninoff doesn't practice his works very much, but he has a great advantage over the rest of us, because now, at the late date in his life, now that he's decided to become a concert pianist, he's tackling all the old works, the Schumann works and the Beethoven works, with a new enthusiasm that we couldn't possibly muster for them. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's the most wonderful thing that ever happened, because it's a tragedy, but to have a person like Rachmaninoff that enjoyed such fame and glory in Russia and thought he was set for the rest of his life. And then this tragedy, having to leave and having lost all his possessions. And first time he came to America, he played all his own works, recitals and concertos, and was a great success. But when he came the second time, the management said, now you can't expect Americans to go and hear you play the same things. So he realized that. And then he had to start practicing from scratch, because his technique was more adaptable to his own works, so to speak, grooved to all the passage work and so on. He didn't have to worry about. But you can't employ the same technique in Beethoven or Schumann, So he started with five-finger exercises, Czerny studies, scales,
No.
yes, and then study all Chopin and all Beethoven, all Schumann that he wanted to play.
Yes. I know he practiced fantastically slowly, slower than any
Yeah.
other pianist I've ever heard in my life. But I didn't realize that he did straight technical work, Benno.
Yes, he told me his favorite is he never starts on anything but the third study of Czerny, D major.
Yes. And, Benno, I know that one of the few happinesses he had in his life was the interpretation of his works by a few counted great artists whom he held very dear, and you were certainly among them.
Well, I was always interested in his works, of course, and I always spoke to me first before he played about the Rhapsody. And another work of his was much smaller dimensions. He could half complainingly told me that he just wrote a very effective little piece. And he said first, I've never asked any colleague of mine to play my works. If they play them, I'm delighted. If they don't play them, I have nothing against them. But please, Benno Moiseiwitsch, I ask you, will you play my scherzo from the Midsummer Night's Dream?
Oh, the transcription of the
Transcription.
Mendelssohn, yes.
And of course I never heard of it. And I asked him about it. He said, oh, he just completed it not long ago and played it in America. It's very effective and it's very successful.
It's a fabulous piece, and he himself has a most extraordinary recording of it. Did you ever hear it?
Yes.
And did you record it yourself? You know, I don't know that. I'm ashamed to
don't
tell
know.
you. I don't know. I don't know your
Well,
recording
I
of
must
it.
tell you, and
Yours is better.
I must yes,
Good. I'm glad to hear you think
but
that.
I'll tell you
It's
why,
wonderful.
if I just in a few words.
Yes.
Because Rachmaninoff told me he recorded this, made 14 recordings,
Yes.
and he did not wasn't satisfied with
With
any.
any.
And he said, gentlemen, if you can find any recording you want to issue, do it, but I'm through. And I heard the recording, which was, nothing can be bad or not good with Rachmaninoff, but I knew it was not as perfect as Rachmaninoff would have liked, and especially after having told me what he did tell me.
Yes.
And after a while, I wanted to record it. And for about a year or 18 months, the company wouldn't do it because they said Rachmaninoff recorded it not so long ago.
Yeah.
And one day I was recording, doing some Chopin or Schumann, or I forget what it was, and it was a particularly happy session.
Yes.
Everything was going just splendidly. And I happened to finish everything. The man came out from the cubicle, said, wonderful, lovely. And I still had half an hour to spare. I was already beginning to put my collar and tie on, and the man said, listen, we still have half an hour. I wish you'd do something. I said, oh, no. If I've succeeded in doing what I had to do, I'm quite satisfied, because to me it's always an ordeal. He said, well, just something. And I kept on saying, no, no, no. And then I said, I'll tell you what. I'll play one thing. Put on the, what do you call it, the metrics.
Yes.
That means you can't hear it back again.
Yes.
And I'll just play it once through. If it's all right, it's all right. If it isn't, we'll go and have lunch. He said, good. So I took off my tie and collar, sat down on the piano again, waited for the red light and for the buzz, and I started. And finished, and I put my both thumbs up. And that's the best recording I ever made in my life.
Oh, Benno, you know,
Now, that is not because Rachmaninoff is not as good a pianist as I am, but that is just a question of, if you know you've got to do something, he probably practiced for it, and he was unhappy. If they'd asked me to do it, I would have practiced for weeks and probably would have been a complete failure.
Oh, we all
But
understand
I knew
that.
I didn't have to do it, therefore it came off.
Yes.
But he knew he had to do it, and this way he had difficulties.
Yes, there's a degree of relaxation one doesn't achieve the other way, and everybody's had that experience. Now, I wish we could go on and on, Benno Moiseiwitsch, but the clock says we can't. Thank you for coming here tonight and to express our appreciation for the insight and devotion you yourself have contributed through the years to the music and the memory of Rachmaninoff, and to wish you yourself many more anniversaries, because we know this is your 50th year on the platform. And all those anniversaries we hope to celebrate with you, Benno.
Thank you very much, Abram. It's nice of you to ask me, and I'm delighted to be here.